We are about to begin the meeting. If everyone could put their headsets on, as you know, this microphone system does not resonate very well throughout the room. And so we're asking everyone to please put their headsets on so we can begin. We could please have order. I call the General Committee on Political Affairs and Security to order. I note there are a number of new members on our committee, and I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you who are joining for the first time. I need to remind you today that today's meeting is being recorded and streamed live on the website. Please also note, as announced by the table office and according to our usual practice, the list of speakers for debate during the committee meeting was closed 1 hour ago. If there are colleagues still wishing to add their names to the list, should time allow, they should please let staff of the committee know, as they are helping me keep a list. Please do so by coming to the podium and registering. All additional requests for the floor will be considered only if time allows. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Our first order of business is to adopt the agenda for today's meeting. The draft agenda of this meeting was circulated to all delegations in advance. Since the Secretariat has not received any comments on the agenda, I will assume there are no objections to its adoption. Thank you. The agenda is adopted. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me at the outset to express my sincere gratitude for the confidence you have placed in me by electing me as chair of the General Committee on Political Affairs and Security, especially because I was not able to make the summer meeting in Porto. It does not go unnoticed that you were still confident enough in me to elect me to this position, and I'm very grateful to you for that. It is an honor to address this committee for the first time in this capacity. I look forward to working with all of you as we continue to confront the most pressing political and security challenges in the OSCE area, guided by principles of comprehensive security and strengthened by the active engagement of our members. I also look forward to working closely with the Vice Chair and the Rapporteur of the committee. The committee leadership has been very active and vocal in recent months on key political and security issues, and I'm confident that our continued close cooperation will further strengthen the committee's contribution to the work of the Assembly. Dear colleagues, we are gathered at a time of existential peril for the Helsinki Principles. In just 5 days, we will mark the 4th anniversary of Russia's unprovoked and ongoing full-scale war of aggression against our friends in Ukraine. This month also marks 12 years since Russia's initial invasion and attempted occupation of eastern Ukraine, including Crimea. For more than a decade, Vladimir Putin has tried and failed to eliminate the Ukrainian people and their state. In this fiendish effort, he has perpetrated war crimes on a scale not seen in Europe since the Second World War. Russian troops have systematically abducted children, they've hunted and detained civilians, and attacked critical infrastructure, leaving millions of Ukrainians, as we speak, fighting lethal cold in the depths of winter. And I commend this committee for having consistently recognized Russia's assault on Ukraine as a clear, gross, and uncorrected violation of the Helsinki Final Act since 2014. A just and lasting peace in Ukraine must be rooted in the Helsinki Principles. Therefore, any peace agreement to end this war must not include any de jure acknowledgement of Russia's temporary occupation of Ukrainian land, period. Furthermore, Peace in Ukraine means a robust, sustainable international security that guarantees Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. I am encouraged that many countries represented in this body have already promised troops, material, and funds as part of our post-war security guarantee. I urge more to do so. A peace deal must include all-for-all prisoner exchanges, as well as the return of abducted Ukrainian children and Ukrainian civilians imprisoned by Russia for manufactured crimes. Russia should absolutely not have a pathway to sanctions relief or a return to international bodies short of these conditions. It is my hope that the OSCE will play a leading role in a post-conflict Ukraine and in ensuring a peace that is lasting because it is just. In discussing the non-negotiable importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity, I would be remiss not to mention recent efforts by the President of the United States to acquire the Danish constituent territory of Greenland through economic coercion or military force. Last month, I co-sponsored bipartisan legislation in the United States Congress to prevent any U.S. president from carrying out unauthorized military action against a NATO ally or territory. And this bill would use Congress's constitutional power of the purse to prohibit the funds, the use of funds or personal military action against NATO country without explicit congressional authorization. Americans with leadership and support of their elected representatives in Congress will continue to stand up for NATO and our broader commitments to transatlantic partnership built on mutual respect, shared values, and common interests. And while military threats, invasions, and wars rightly occupy our focus on global security, we must not lose sight of the fact that erosion of democratic governance and the rule of law lies upstream for many security crises. There is absolutely a direct link between domestic repression and international aggression. It is no coincidence that in this kleptocratic autocracy that invaded Ukraine, which is a neighboring democracy, as a result, we must never surrender to the temptation to engage in cynical diplomatic compromises with Russia that turn a blind eye to its domestic repression and its rampant corruption. An anti-democratic Russia will always be a threat to regional stability. In Georgia, democratic backsliding risks greater instability in the South Caucasus. Against the clear will of the Georgian people, authorities are compromising Georgia's independence and embracing Russia in its models of corruption and repression. Georgia authorities should realize that Russia has brought only military occupation, international isolation, and the subordination of Georgian identity and nationhood. Amidst proliferating threats to the Helsinki principles, it is important to recall that this body of commitments possesses unique strengths and truths in articulation of comprehensive security. A holistic understanding of the political, economic, environmental, and human dimensions of international security remains the most promising and visionary basis for durable peace in our world. Indeed, we have all come to admire the valor, resilience of the Ukrainian people, which is indivisible from their country's commitment to democratic governance and the rule of law. Wartime has not weakened their fervor for democracy, and on the contrary, it seems it just have intensified it. Just last year, we saw thousands and thousands of Ukrainians go to the streets to demand accountability for corruption. The impetus that brought them into the streets is the same that lies at the core of Ukraine's storied grit and resolve in war. And it will be the driving force behind Ukraine's recovery and reconstruction in peacetime. We as legislators are a critical part of upholding the promise of Helsinki. We represent the voice of our peoples, manifest throughout democratic institutions, and we should shoulder their aspirations for liberty and prosperity. As an American, I believe the shared values across the Atlantic will continue to unite our two continents. Parliamentary diplomacy plays an important role in solidifying this reality. To that end, the United States delegation is committed to engaging in the OSCE-PA in a bicameral, bipartisan fashion. We are committed to this assembly. Hear me, we are committed to this assembly. To that role of the legislative oversight in steering our countries toward the fullest implementation of Helsinki principles and to using dialogue to mediate differences and forge unity. Let me conclude by briefly turning to today's agenda. The winter meeting provides an important platform for legislators of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly to engage directly with partners from the OSCE's executive structures. I would like to sincerely thank all of our guests for joining us today, for their continued engagement with this committee. And today, we will hear from the chairperson of the Forum for Security, Cooperation, and from the OSCE High Commissioner on National Minorities. Our rapporteur, Mr. Tobias Winkler, will present his ideas and intentions regarding his report for the upcoming annual session. We will also hold a special debate on the fight for Helsinki principles in Ukraine and beyond, grounding regional peace and comprehensive security that will be introduced by the director of the OSCE Conflict Prevention Center. I hope that the exchanges during the special debate, together with our general discussion, will serve as a strong starting point for shaping the rapporteur's report and the draft resolution that this committee will submit to the Assembly for the annual session. Let today's session be an occasion to reaffirm our shared commitment to the project of comprehensive security in the OSCE region, and to further develop the potency of interparliamentary exchange and cooperation in realizing a safer and freer world. I look forward to today's presentations and your contributions. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, it is a great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, the chairperson of the OSCE Forum for Security, Cooperation, and Permanent Representative of France to the OSCE, Ambassador Fatine Benevides-Foot. Dear Ambassador, thank you for joining us today. Thank you very much. We look forward to your insights on the activities of the FSC, your chairpersonship priorities, and how OSCE PA legislators can engage with the work of the FSC and its support and its objectives. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
I thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. If you allow me, I will speak French. Mesdames et messieurs les parlementaires, mesdames et messieurs les délégués, c'est un grand honneur pour moi de m'adresser à votre auguste Assemblée et plus particulièrement au Comité pour les affaires politiques et de sécurité. Comme vous le savez, la France, depuis le début de l'année, assume la présidence du Forum de coopération en matière de sécurité. Nous assumons cette responsabilité avec la volonté de rendre possible un dialogue inclusif ou aussi inclusif que possible dans cette enceinte, mais aussi avec une conscience aiguë de la gravité de la situation qui a été rappelée à l'instant par le président du comité, dans laquelle se trouve le continent européen. Dans ce contexte, 3 idées directrices guident notre présidence. Tout d'abord, la France s'engage pleinement afin que le Forum de coopération en matière de sécurité puisse jouer le rôle que lui confère son mandat au service de la sécurité et de la stabilité du continent européen. Parce que faire vivre le mandat du Forum relève de la responsabilité de l'ensemble des États participants, il est primordial que chacun d'entre nous s'inscrivent dans un dialogue de bonne foi au service de la gestion du risque et de la prévention des escalades et des comportements menaçants. Cela nécessite de la part de tous les États participants le respect des engagements souscrits dans le cadre de l'OSCE, en particulier le code de conduite relatif aux aspects politico-militaires de la sécurité et du document de Vienne. Au-delà des principes au fondement de notre organisation, le droit international doit être défendu par principe, car il est, je cite le ministre français des Affaires étrangères Jean-Noël Barrot, il est le bouclier de ceux qui n'en ont pas. Il est un bien commun, il est la condition de la paix, de la stabilité et de la sécurité du plus grand nombre. Mesdames et messieurs les parlementaires, ce respect, cet engagement de bonne foi sont des conditions indispensables pour que le Forum puisse accomplir la mission que lui ont conférée les 57 États participants, c'est-à-dire œuvrer à la prévention des conflits dans la région de l'OSCE et au renforcement de la confiance et de la sécurité. À vrai dire, dans le contexte actuel, il serait sans doute plus correct de parler de la limitation des risques d'escalade et de la gestion de la défiance. Car, et ce sera mon deuxième point, mal nommer les choses, c'est ajouter au malheur du monde, comme disait Albert Camus. Dans ce contexte, il nous appartient en effet de nommer les choses sans détour, comme l'a clairement fait l'honorable représentant, M. Vizey. La guerre d'agression menée par la Russie à l'encontre de l'Ukraine constitue la principale menace pour la paix et la stabilité du continent européen. Avec ses partenaires européens, la France continue et continuera dans la durée à soutenir l'Ukraine dans l'exercice de son droit légitime à la légitime défense face à l'agression dont elle fait l'objet depuis 4 ans et à soutenir sa souveraineté, son indépendance et son intégrité territoriale. L'engagement premier de la France, en lien avec ses partenaires européens et américains, est d'être au service d'une paix juste et durable en Ukraine. À ce titre, le Forum de coopération en matière de sécurité est également l'enceinte dans laquelle les États participants sont comptables du comportement de leurs forces armées au regard du Code de conduite et en particulier du respect des conventions de Genève et du droit international humanitaire. Troisièmement, pour faire œuvre utile et tenter d'incarner cette ambition dans un contexte difficile, pour dire le moins, la présidence française du Forum a inscrit son programme de travail thématique ayant fait ou devant faire l'objet de ce qu'on appelle des dialogues de sécurité. Nous avons retenu 4 thèmes pour ces dialogues de sécurité. 2 ont déjà eu lieu. La question de la réhabilitation et de la réinsertion des militaires blessés et des anciens combattants, d'une part, et d'autre part, l'intégration des femmes dans les armées, les défis que cette question pose et les perspectives pour y répondre. 2 dialogues de sécurité sont à venir. D'une part, le traitement des prisonniers de guerre, obligations et responsabilités, dans le cadre d'une réunion conjointe avec le Conseil permanent présidé par la Suisse. Et enfin, un dialogue de sécurité qui sera consacré à l'accord sous-régional sur le contrôle des armements qui s'inscrit dans le cadre des accords de Dayton et à l'occasion des 30 ans de la mise en œuvre de cet accord sous-régional en Bosnie-Herzégovine. Les 2 premiers dialogues de sécurité ont permis d'ores et déjà de dégager des enseignements que je crois utile de partager avec vous, mesdames et messieurs les parlementaires, parce que les enseignements que nous tirons renvoient au cadre législatif de chacun de nos États. Je vous les livre à ce stade en engageant ma propre lecture des débats qui ont eu lieu. D'abord, s'agissant du traitement des vétérans, je retiens que la prise en charge des anciens combattants est un enjeu éthique et politique que nos sociétés doivent intégrer. Cette prise en charge des anciens combattants et des blessés de guerre doit concrètement être envisagée de façon multidimensionnelle, axée sur les besoins des anciens combattants. Cela suppose une approche interministérielle dans nos États. Nous avons eu des exemples qui nous ont, au cours du débat, qui ont permis d'illustrer cette réalité. Et donc, il faut faciliter ce travail interministériel. Concernant la temporalité des actions à entreprendre dans ce domaine, les modes variés de soutien aux anciens combattants et blessés de guerre doivent être anticipés et envisagés dans la durée, non pas comme des opérations ponctuelles, mais réellement comme une prise en charge de ces individus qui décident, au péril de leur vie, de s'engager dans la défense des principes auxquels nous nous sommes engagés. Nous leur devons donc un engagement dans la durée, une prise en charge dans la durée. Ensuite, les nouvelles technologies militaires, et nous le voyons hélas à l'œuvre en Ukraine, impliquent de nouvelles formes de dommages corporels qu'il s'agit également de prendre en compte d'ores et déjà, avec de la partie réhabilitation, sont des questions médicales mais aussi sociales. Enfin, s'agissant de ce dialogue, je retiens que les ressources financières et humaines constituent un enjeu important de la prise en charge, qu'il s'agit donc de prendre en compte quand nous allouons des moyens aux armées et à l'ensemble des ministères concernés par cette prise en charge. Enfin, je voudrais revenir sur le dialogue de sécurité qui était consacré aux femmes dans les forces armées, à la place des femmes dans les forces armées. Je retiens d'abord que la guerre ne connaît pas de genre et qu'à ce titre, l'intégration des femmes est une nécessité opérationnelle des armées modernes. La coopération au sein de notre forum constitue un levier pour mettre en commun les expériences et nous avons bénéficié à ce titre de l'expertise d'une officier supérieure des forces armées ukrainiennes engagée dans le commandement d'une brigade d'artillerie, un témoignage extrêmement fort et très utile qui a été, je crois, particulièrement apprécié lors du forum. Cette évolution nécessite de la part de l'institution militaire une adaptation de manière à répondre aux besoins spécifiques des femmes et leur permettre de développer leur carrière. Or, on sait qu'elles font face à un certain nombre de contraintes. Et donc, il faut pouvoir intégrer ces contraintes pour leur permettre de rester dans l'institution militaire aussi longtemps que leurs coreligionnaires masculins. Enfin, cette prise en charge ou cette ambition d'augmenter la part des femmes dans les forces armées de nos pays suppose un renforcement de la lutte contre les violences sexuelles et sexistes au sein des armées, comme ailleurs dans la société, je me permettrai d'ajouter. Voilà, je ne veux pas être trop longue, mais je serais vraiment ravie de répondre à vos questions si vous en avez. J'espère que ces considérations vous ont été ou vous seront utiles et je vous remercie de votre attention.
Our next speaker is the High Commissioner on National Minorities, Ambassador Christopher Kopp. We greatly appreciate your presence here today to share insights into your important mandate. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for your kind introduction. I'm very pleased to address the Parliamentary Assembly once again, and I would like to thank you for your invitation. Dialogue with parliamentarians is essential to my institution's efforts to support participating states in preventing conflict by fostering cohesive and resilient societies. How national minority issues are addressed remains a key indicator of democratic strength and legitimacy. Where minorities are included and heard, societies are more stable. Where they are excluded, tensions may grow, often quietly, but with consequences that may cross borders, affecting peace and stability. The High Commissioner on National Minorities was established in 1992 as a conflict prevention instrument, mandated to provide early warning and early action where national minority issues risk developing into inter-ethnic tension or conflict. And through quiet diplomacy, expert analysis, sustained engagement, my institution offers impartial advice to national and local authorities, as well as to communities and civil society actors. My focus is on practical, workable solutions that help reduce tensions in diverse societies and between participating states. This cooperative approach addresses sensitive issues before they escalate, avoiding the far greater human and financial costs of conflict. And as democratically elected representatives, your role in shaping such measures is indispensable, and I greatly value our close cooperation, including in countries where I visit, and I always make it a priority to meet with parliamentarians. National minorities are an integral part of the fabric of our states, yet too often they are portrayed as security concerns. Across the OSCE region, I observe a growing instrumentalization of minority issues for political purposes. Combined with pressure on democratic institutions and renewed nationalist rhetoric, this trend increases risks to stability, both within states and across borders. States carry a dual responsibility to protect and promote the rights of persons belonging to national minorities within their jurisdiction, but also to act responsibly toward minorities in other states. In 5 days, 4 years will have passed since the start of the war of the Russian Federation against Ukraine. Throughout this period, my institution has closely followed the profound impact of the war on questions of identity and minority relations. Ukraine's post-war future will remain as diverse, multi-ethnic, and multilingual as its past. Strengthened social cohesion will therefore be essential to long-term resilience. And my office continues to support Ukrainian institutions in legislative, policy, and institutional developments in this field. In the current complex security context, national minority issues are often discussed in strategic or legal terms. At their core, however, they concern people's daily lives. This is why my institution has consistently emphasized prevention through inclusion. Stability is not achieved through abstract commitments alone, but through practical measures that improve the lived reality of individuals and communities. And allow me to illustrate this with a few examples of issues I work on in various participating states. Let me begin where inclusion often begins, in the classroom. Multilingual education enables minority children to preserve their identity while gaining strong proficiency in the state language. These goals reinforce one another, preventing societal stratification and promoting equal opportunities. They represent one of the most effective investments in social cohesion and stability. Effective participation of national minorities in public life is another cornerstone of democratic societies. Meaningful representation of national minorities at local, regional, and national levels strengthens the legitimacy of decision-making. When people see themselves reflected in parliaments and councils, trust grows, and with it, resilience against polarization and manipulation. Socioeconomic inclusion is equally vital. I recently co-hosted a regional event in Montenegro on this issue, focusing on barriers that national minorities face to economic participation and on ways to promote equitable access to resources and targeted support. Socioeconomic inclusion of national minorities not only strengthens social cohesion, it can also drive regional growth, improving the lives of many. Finally, I'm continuing the work of my predecessors in addressing the impact of contested historical legacies on diverse societies, including through education. Since its establishment, my institution has issued 10 sets of recommendations and guidelines offering guidance on minority issues across the OSCE area, from integration to interstate relations. And building on this experience, I intend to publish new recommendations in the coming year, focusing on engaging with history in ways that promote cohesion rather than division. And I encourage you to make full use of this guidance. These measures may appear incremental in the face of today's global challenges, Yet conflict prevention is built precisely on such steady, people-centered efforts. Through legislation, budgetary choices, and public oversight and public discourse, you help translate commitments into reality. You also set the tone, whether minority issues are approached with responsibility or care, or reduced to political slogans. In closing, Mr. Chair, let me underline this. Reducing tensions around national minority issues is not simply about managing diversity. It is about strengthening inclusive democracy and resilience from the ground up, one classroom, one community, one decision-making process at a time. And I see parliamentarians as essential partners in this effort and in fulfilling my conflict prevention mandate. I thank you for your attention and your continued engagement, and I look forward to your continued cooperation. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much. And with this, we will proceed to the next item on our agenda, Mr. Tobias Winkler's presentation in his capacity as Rapporteur on the preparation of the committee report and draft resolution for the upcoming annual session in Hague. Mr. Rapporteur, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, distinguished colleagues. It is a big honor to address you today as Rapporteur of the General Committee on Political Affairs and Security and to present my initial ideas and priorities for the report and the resolution that this committee will submit to the annual session in The Hague later this year. We are meeting at a defining moment of our organization. Last year, we marked the 50th anniversary of the Helsinki Final Act, yet never in these 5 decades have its principles been so openly and systematically challenged. Sovereignty, territorial integrity, the inviolability of borders, the non-use of force, and respect for human rights, the very foundations of the OSCE, are under sustained attack. The theme of today's special debate, the fight for Helsinki principles in Ukraine and beyond, grounding regional peace in comprehensive security. This captures precisely the challenge before us. My intention is that the 2026 report and resolution should be firmly anchored in this idea. The defending Helsinki principles is about the survival of rules-based security across the entire OSCE area. Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine remains the most serious threat to European and international security in a generation. It is not only a war against a country, but a war against the principles that have kept our region from sliding back into chaos for half a century. As we speak, Russian attacks continue to target energy grids, heating systems, water supply, and other civilian infrastructure, leaving millions of Ukrainians exposed to hardship during yet another cold winter with minus 25 degrees Celsius. This deliberate weaponization of suffering is a flagrant violation of international humanitarian law and of all Helsinki commitments. My report will therefore reaffirm 3 core messages. First, Ukraine must remain at the center of all diplomatic, political, and security efforts. Any negotiations about Ukraine's future must include Ukraine, must respect its sovereignty and territorial integrity, and must be grounded in international law, not in fait accompli created by force. Second, support for Ukraine must be sustained and reliable, militarily, economically, and politically. Ukraine's ability to resist aggression today is inseparable from its ability to recover and thrive tomorrow. Third, the OSCE must be ready for its future role in Ukraine, whether in ceasefire monitoring, post-conflict rehabilitation, civilian protection, or confidence building. My report will therefore call for serious contingency planning so that the organization is ready to act when political conditions allow. Let's be prepared. Dear members, beyond Ukraine, the erosion of rules-based international order is visible across the OSCE area. Hybrid warfare, cyber operations, economic coercion, and disinformation are now routinely used to weaken states without triggering traditional responses. This is why my report will place a strong emphasis on the protection of critical infrastructure, energy systems, digital networks, transport hubs, water supply, and undersea cables. These are now frontline assets in modern conflicts. Attacks against them must be treated as violations of international norms, not as a gray zone activities. Linked to this is the issue of arms control and risk reduction. The weakening of long-standing frameworks and the return of nuclear signaling and military brinkmanship make miscalculation more likely. The OSCE must reassert its role as a platform for transparency, dialogue, and confidence building, especially when relations are strained. Colleagues, the OSCE area is also changing geographically as well as strategically. The Arctic and the High North are increasingly at the crossroads of climate change and global power competition. New routes and resources are opening, and so are new risks. The Arctic must remain a region of low tension, governed by international law, environmental responsibility, indigenous rights, and cooperation. Recent developments show how fragile stability there has become. Greenland, an autonomous part of the Kingdom of Denmark, has emerged a geopolitical flashpoint. What was once a distant strategic issue is now part of today's security reality. Let me be clear. Greenland's sovereignty and territorial integrity must be respected and upheld. Political decisions about its future rest with Greenlandic institutions and the Danish authorities, an expression of the same Helsinki principles we are gathered to reaffirm. This leads to a broader point. Helsinki principles are not selective and they are not negotiable. Respect for sovereignty, territorial integrity, and inviolability of borders must apply universally to Ukraine, to Denmark, Moldova, Georgia, and every OSCE participating state. If these principles are weakened in one place, they are weakened everywhere. Dear colleagues, another emerging dimension of security is access to critical raw materials, from rare earth to lithium and green transition inputs. These resources are increasingly used as instruments of geopolitical leverage. The OSCE region has enormous potential here, but partnerships must be based on rules, transparency, and mutual benefit, not dependency and coercion. My report will treat economic security and supply chain resilience as part of comprehensive security. And we must be honest about a fundamental truth. There's no durable hard security without democratic security. Attacks on media freedom, independent courts, civil society, and free elections make states more vulnerable to foreign interference, corruption, and instability. Climate change and social inequality are already amplifying these risks. That is why my report will continue to underline the inseparability of the OSCE's three dimensions: political, military, economic, and environmental, and human. Finally, we must speak about the OSCE. The OSCE is not an abstract secretariat in Vienna, Warsaw, or Copenhagen. The OSCE is its participating states. And the parliamentarians sitting in this room today, they have a challenge. If we want to be stronger and more relevant, that work begins in our own capitals. Yes, reforms are needed, but reforms must mean more political attention, not less. More resources, not fewer. And more engagement, not disengagement. Field missions, dialogue platforms, and conflict prevention tools remain among the OSCE's greatest assets, and my report will call for their full political and financial backing. Colleagues, last year's 50th anniversary at the Helsinki Final Act was not a ceremonial moment. It was a call to responsibility. In The Hague this summer, our committee must deliver a report that is clear-eyed about the dangers we face, principled about the values we defend, and realistic about the tools we need. Ukraine, critical infrastructure, Arctic stability, raw materials, democratic resilience, and a stronger OSCE are not separate files. They are all part of the same struggle to ensure that law does not give way to force and that right does not give way to might in the OSCE region and beyond. Thank you, Mr. Chairman Mark Wiese. Thank you, Jefrosima Pejovic. And thank you, Manu, and all staff members who support our work in the First Committee. I look forward to working with my fellow committee officers and you all in shaping a report that meets this moment. Thank you very much for your attention.
Danke, Herr Winkler. Dear colleagues, we will now proceed to our special debate. And it is a great pleasure to invite Ms. Kate Faring, Director of OSCE Conflict Prevention Center and Deputy Head of the OSCE Secretariat, to introduce our special debate. We look forward to hearing your valuable insights on the current security environment in our region and the OSCE's effort to uphold Helsinki principles. Ms. Faring, the floor is now yours.
Thank you very much, Congressman Chair, distinguished President, esteemed parliamentarians, colleagues and partners. This session is an important opportunity to reflect on the enduring relevance of the Helsinki principles, which for 5 decades have underpinned our commitment to cooperative security and a shared European security architecture. These principles are neither abstract nor historical footnotes. They remain the normative foundation of our common space, affirming sovereignty, territorial integrity, peaceful settlement of disputes, and respect for human rights. Yet today, they are tested by enduring tensions and by the tragic persistence of war in Europe. The gap between principle and practice has real consequences. It challenges our confidence-building architecture, including the interconnected arms control and transparency mechanisms that served for decades as stabilizing pillars. Reaffirming the OSCE's role in shaping a peaceful, resilient and cooperative Europe requires political will, renewed cooperation and accountability for agreed measures. It demands that we reinvest in transparency and predictability while incorporating innovations such as data-driven early warning and risk management tools to strengthen preventative diplomacy, as our Swiss chair this year has highlighted as one of its priorities. Early warning functions matter because they inform choices before crises escalate. They help identify risk patterns not only in the run-up to violent conflict, but also in political volatility that can undermine democratic resilience. This capacity is not theoretical. It is essential to preserving stability and facilitating timely, coordinated action. We in the Conflict Prevention Center monitor, analyze, and if necessary, recommend to our senior leadership intervention, be it through quiet or sometimes noisy diplomacy to diffuse tension before it escalates. Across the OSCE region, our field operations embody this comprehensive approach. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, the OSCE mission continues to apply quiet but persistent dialogue and facilitation, trust building and institutional support. During the constitutional strains in Republika Srpska last year, the mission kept communication channels open, advocated for the respect of the constitutional order, and supported processes that promote institutional clarity and democratic legitimacy. The mission also works at a community level, one of its real strengths. In communities such as Majevica, Upper Drina, and Srebrenica, incremental peacebuilding from local dialogue to inter-entity cooperation demonstrates that sustainability of peace and security is only possible if you combine the work with local actors and institutions at both the local and the state levels. In Central Asia, the OSCE's presence and engagement have helped translate a fantastic political will into cross-border cooperation. The first Fergana Peace Forum, an initiative of the governments of Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, which we were pleased to support, forged new pathways for regional collaboration following the historic signing of the Hujan Declaration in March last year. Our field operations in Central Asia also deliver practical support, from explosive hazard clearance to digitalization initiatives that strengthen transparency and governance, to programs that bolster sustainable livelihoods for women and communities. These examples illustrate that conflict prevention and peace building are not driven by single moments, but by sustained engagement over time. A combination of political dialogue, institutional building, community-level confidence building, and economic growth. On the ongoing war in Ukraine, the OSCE's role as a platform for dialogue was underlined recently by the visits of the chairperson in office and the Secretary General to Kiev and Moscow. They underscored the need to end the war and address the humanitarian suffering. They also served to recall to the two OSCE participating states how OSCE's tools, experience, and expertise can support peace processes and post-conflict challenges in line with international law. They emphasized the unique value of OSCE's inclusive multilateral format. The organization, they said, stands ready, using its long-standing experience and operational tool to assist where and when requested. Should the parties require it, the OSCE is prepared to support implementation of any settlement on the ground. Mediation and dialogue also remain central to upholding the Helsinki principles. This is not abstract work. It is the painstaking, necessary work of building trust where it has eroded, of facilitating dialogue where tensions persist, and of sustaining cooperative security in an environment that can appear confrontational. Our mission to Moldova, for example, continues to work every day to mediate between Chișinău and Tiraspol for practical confidence-building measures in support of the Transnistrian settlement process. This year, too, we mark 30 years of the OSCE Framework for Arms Control, which describes the OSCE region as a common security space and brings together interlocking conventional arms control treaties and agreements that aim at increasing military security and stability amongst the participating states. Regrettably, the framework has in recent years been fundamentally undermined, as has confidence and security building in the OSCE area as a whole. More positively, though, our work in Southeastern Europe continues to demonstrate how effective control of small arms and light weapons proliferation is fundamental in post-conflict societies. Through the OSCE Regional Training Programme for Canine Assistance in Weapons and Ammunition Detection in the last few years, more than 25 dog handlers have been trained with technical support from the French Gendarmerie and Frontex. Merci, Alphonse. In addition, the OSCE has supported the Ministry of Defense of Montenegro, for example, by training over 230 participants in ammunition safety and stockpile management. These are just a few examples of the diverse range of OSCE's work and how we are striving to reduce the risks that lead to instability. Distinguished parliamentarians, you play a crucial role in preserving the political space for dialogue and cooperative security that the Helsinki Principles call for. Parliamentary engagement, oversight, and diplomatic outreach are indispensable in sustaining the momentum for peace and in ensuring that comprehensive security is a lived reality for the 1 billion people across our region. Reaffirmation of cooperative security will not happen by accident. It requires determined engagement across capitals and within this assembly to uphold commitments, invest in preventative diplomacy, and strengthen the institutions that enable peace. The OSCE's comprehensive approach, linking political, military, human, and economic dimensions, remains the most effective framework to realize these commitments. The platform that the OSCE provides is also unique. The tools exist, the experience exists, the expertise exists. The organization is ready. The question before us is whether we can match the Helsinki vision with the political will to make cooperative security tangible once again for all of our citizens. I thank you. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Madam Director, thank you very much. And we are now going to proceed to our special debate and the debate items on 3, 4, 5, and 6 of the agenda. I know that we have a large number of committee members that have asked to speak, and I want to remind everyone that we have limited time available. So speaking time will be limited to 3 minutes. Speaking time will be limited to 3 minutes for each intervention. Please pay attention to the timer, which is visible on the screens. I now call the first Vice Chair of the General Committee on Political Affairs and Security, Mrs. Jaroshima Pejovic from Montenegro, and she will be followed by Mrs. Arma Laura Jondocher. of Iceland.
Thank you, Mark. Dear fellow colleagues, it is a great honor to address you today here in this role and in this beautiful city of Vienna. The great Austrian painter and poet Oskar Kokoschka once said, "We are not born human, we must become human." And you can tell a great deal about humanity and society from art. So probably it is not a coincidence that in my region, the Balkan, more poems have been written about war and the fight for freedom than about love. In the Balkans, we have learned through painful experience the cost of failed dialogue and division. But we have also learned the value of multilateralism. For us, multilateral platforms were not just an abstract diplomatic concept, they were lifelines. They helped us to rebuild institutions, restore trust, and move from conflict towards resolution. Security cannot be built alone. Peace cannot be sustained alone. In the time of crisis, multilateral organizations also hold accountable those who are violating the rules. As crises multiply, we must remember who we are, not just as organizations, not just as OSCE PA, but as individuals. Security is not just about strategy or deterrence, it's about responsibility and character. That truly separates us from violence is our capacity for dialogue, the ability to resolve differences without force. If we abandon dialogue, we risk to abandon our humanity. So in this globally dangerous moment, let us protect not only our borders, but also our values. Let us choose cooperation, dialogue, and reconciliation because we are not born human. We become human through the choices we make. Thank you.
The next speaker is Mrs. Ama Laura Jondocher from Iceland, to be followed by Mr. Stefan Dimely of France.
Thank you. Chair, distinguished guests, I would like to use my time to speak about Greenland. Iceland stands firmly with Greenland and its conditional right to determine its own future. The people of Greenland must always have the final say in a decisions that affects their land, their resources, and their destiny. This is not only a political principle, it's a matter of fundamental respect of international law. For small countries like Iceland, respect for international law is essential. It's our protection. When international law is upheld, small nations have security. When it's ignored, small nations become vulnerable. The principle of the Final Act, the Helsinki Final Act, respects for sovereignty, territorial integrity, and peaceful settlement of disputes, and the equal rights and self-determination of people remain just as relevant today as they were when they were signed. These principles are especially important in regions like the Arctic, where stability depends on cooperation and mutual respect. Security in the Northern Hemisphere is important, but it's as important to respect the wishes and the will of people who live there. The Arctic is not only a strategic region, it's a home to communities and nations whose rights must be respected. Greenland is a part of the Kingdom of Denmark and a part of our shared security framework through NATO. Greenland is our ally, our partner, and our neighbor, and Iceland shares a close and valued relationship with the Greenlandic people. And the future of Greenland belongs to the people of Greenland, and Iceland stands with them. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is going to be Mr. Stefan Dimely from France, and followed by Mrs. Ingrita Cersini from Latvia.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Mes chers collègues, depuis le 24 février 2022, date de l'invasion à grande échelle de l'Ukraine par la Russie, notre continent traverse la crise sécuritaire et démocratique la plus grave depuis la fin de la guerre froide. 4 ans plus tard, ce conflit n'est pas seulement une guerre territoriale. Il constitue une épreuve majeure pour l'ordre international, pour nos démocraties et bien sûr pour la sécurité euro-atlantique. D'un point de vue humain, les chiffres parlent d'eux-mêmes. l'Ukraine compterait près de 600 000 victimes au total, dont plus de 100 000 morts. En 2025, le nombre de victimes civiles a encore augmenté, en raison notamment de l'usage accru de missiles et de drones contre des zones habitées. Derrière ces chiffres, il y a bien sûr des drames humains, des familles décimées, des enfants tués dans leurs écoles, des enfants qui servent également de monnaie d'échange, comme l'a rappelé tout à l'heure notre ami Ruslan. Face à cette agression, l'Alliance atlantique a démontré une résilience remarquable. Depuis 2022, les Alliés ont fourni environ 40 milliards d'euros d'assistance annuelle à l'Ukraine, dont près de 60% provenant des alliés européens et du Canada. Cependant, cette crise rappelle également l'urgence d'une défense européenne plus autonome, complémentaire de l'OTAN. Car l'Europe voit maintenant la menace à ses portes et doit bien sûr naturellement de plus en plus s'émanciper des États-Unis. Par ailleurs, sans une dissuasion nucléaire commune, l'Union européenne sera contrainte dans ses décisions stratégiques. Au-delà de l'aspect militaire, cette guerre est aussi une confrontation entre modèles politiques. Les bombardements d'infrastructures civiles, la désinformation massive et les attaques hybrides visent à affaiblir les sociétés démocratiques. Défendre l'Ukraine, c'est donc défendre les principes qui fondent l'OSCE: souveraineté, intégrité territoriale et respect des droits humains. Comme le rappelait un ancien secrétaire général de l'ONU, les Nations unies n'ont pas été créées pour mener l'humanité au paradis, mais pour la sauver de l'enfer. Notre devoir est donc clair: maintenir notre soutien à l'Ukraine, préserver la cohésion transatlantique et bâtir une défense européenne beaucoup plus robuste. La sécurité et la démocratie en Europe en dépendent.
The next speaker that you will hear will be from Latvia, Mrs. Ingrita Cirsene, followed by from the United States of America, Senator Roger Wicker.
Dear colleagues, from the very beginning, OSCE organization played an important role in securing our independence, including the withdrawal of Russian troops and the closure of the Skrunda radar station in Latvia. These experiences taught us that peace in Europe depends on respect for rules and not on power. But things are changing. Today, those principles are under direct attack. Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine is not only a war against one country, it's an assault on the Helsinki principles themselves: sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the peaceful settlement of disputes. The OSCE Parliamentary Assembly remains united in condemning this aggression and in supporting Ukraine. Yet we must also recognize the difficult reality we face. Russia continues to exploit the consensus rule at the governmental level of the OSCE to block decisions, paralyze institutions, and weaken the organization from within. This undermines the very purpose of comprehensive security. Latvia has consistently raised these concerns. We believe it is unacceptable that an aggressor state that doesn't pay its contributions and openly violates international law can still benefit from the credibility of OSCE institutions. This devalues our shared principles and erodes trust. Comprehensive security can't exist without moral clarity. Defending the Helsinki principles today means standing firmly with Ukraine and ensuring that our institutions are not weakened by those who seek to destroy them. Thank you.
The next speaker that you will hear from will be Roger Wicker from the United States of America, followed by Mr. Sergei Rachkov from Belarus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations on running a very fine session of this committee. I'm heartened as I talk to my fellow delegates from around Europe and Canada and the United States that we are virtually unanimous in condemning the Russian aggression against Ukraine. Vladimir Putin is one of the worst thieves in the history of the world. He lives in palace after palace in luxury while his citizens are deprived of the essential accoutrements of life. In war, he is depriving civilians today of heat and other utilities, specifically a war crime. Let's be frank about the leader of Russia, Vladimir Putin. He deserves to be in prison, not at the negotiating table. But as long as he's there, I offer this advice to get to today's negotiators and perhaps to others within the sound of my voice who may begin negotiating with us, with Vladimir Putin. When has Vladimir Putin ever kept a promise? When has he ever made a commitment that he lived up to? If Vladimir Putin gets away with this invasion, my friends, it will happen again. There is a solution to this, and it involves cutting off the circulation of Vladimir Putin. Now, he's lost 35,000 men dead and wounded in December, 30,000 dead and wounded in January. It may be that in this month of February, he will lose 50,000 Russian young men dead and wounded. I'm tired of half measures on the part of the West. If we really want Russia's aggression to end, we need to shut down the shadow fleet. We need to enact the oil sanctions and make them real and cut off Vladimir Putin's ability to wage war. If we really want this conflict to end with success for a victim country who has done no wrong, then we need to take it to the Russians and cut off their circulation and cut off their oil. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The next speaker you will hear from will be Mr. Sergei Ratskov from Belarus, followed by Mrs. Irina Shara-Lambidis from Cyprus.
Господин председатель, Беларусь исходит из того, что нынешний кризис безопасности в регионе ОБСЕ носит системный характер. Его причины в последовательном отходе от принципа равной и неделимой безопасности, в игнорировании законных интересов каждого государства. В последнее время, к сожалению, ОБСЕ не сделала и не делает ничего для безопасной и бесконфликтной ситуации в Европе. Сегодня необходимо работать над разрешением собственных проблемных вопросов, прежде всего в экономике и безопасности, чтобы обеспечить стабильность, достойный уровень жизни людей и экономическую конкурентоспособность региона. Попытки затягивания конфронтации, милитаризации сопредельных территорий и сохранения логики геополитического противостояния ведут в противоположном направлении. Мы обращаем внимание также на недопустимость использования площадки парламентской ассамблеи экстремистскими элементами, преследуемыми в Беларуси по закону. Наша делегация поддерживает высказывание сегодня мнения генерального секретаря ОБСЕ, что важно искать ответы на вопросы о причинах сложившейся ситуации в организации. Мы также согласны с господином Винклером, что не должно быть принуждения, должно быть экономическое сотрудничество. Беларусь последовательно выступает за возвращение к мандатной логике организации, к восстановлению полноценного профессионального обсуждения военно-политических рисков, мер доверия, предотвращения инцидентов и контроля над вооружениями. Вместе с тем, мы убеждены, что выход из нынешнего тупика лежит шире исключительно европейской повестки. В условиях формирования многополярного мира назрела необходимость выработки новой архитектуры евразийской безопасности, основанной на уважении интересов всех государств континента. Президент Республики Беларусь Александр Лукашенко предлагает: давайте вести диалог, не надо конфликтовать. Именно этой цели служит выдвинутая белорусской стороной инициатива по формированию Евразийской хартии многообразия и многополярности в 21 веке. Речь идет о создании инклюзивной, концептуальной основы безопасности, не противоречащей Уставу Организации Объединенных Наций и ориентированной на выработку согласованных принципов мирного сосуществования в Евразии. Практической площадкой для обсуждения этих подходов стала Минская международная конференция по евразийской безопасности, которая уже зарекомендовала себя как пространство открытого и предметного диалога без предварительных условий и идеологических фильтров. Беларусь готова и далее предоставлять такую площадку всем заинтересованным государствам. Благодарю вас.
The next speaker that you will hear from will be from Cyprus, Ms. Irena Charalambidis, followed by Mr. Makita Portorayev from Ukraine.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I would like to thank you personally and Senator Wicker for being here for our winter meeting, and you show your full support to this organization. It's extremely important to all of us, I think. Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Dear colleagues, Helsinki was supposed to be a principle binding contract. Borders are not changed by force. Sovereignty is not negotiable. Human rights are not optional. Security is shared. Ukraine is the litmus test of these principles, because if Helsinki fails there, it weakens everywhere. But let me say something rather uncomfortable. When the biggest decisions are taken, Europe is too often absent. Not absent from statements, absent from the table. Look at the war in Ukraine. The United States carries the primary role in the hard security equation. And around it, other players act with their own agendas, their own leverage, their own timelines. Meanwhile, the European Union, despite being the most directly affected strategically, economically, morally, too often looks like a payer, not a player. This is not a criticism for the sake of criticism. It is a warning. Because a continent cannot outsource its security and still claim strategic autonomy, a continent cannot preach comprehensive security and then not be present in the room where security is negotiated. Helsinki principles require more than weapons. They require comprehensive security. That means three things. First, hard security, yes. Aggression must not be rewarded. Deterrence matters, but deterrence without diplomacy becomes a permanent war economy. Second, economic security, sanctions, energy resilience, protection of critical infrastructure, supply chains, ports, cables, data. Because in today's wars, the battlefield is also financial systems, shipping routes, technology, and narratives. Third, the dimension we keep downgrading: human security, human rights, rule of law, protection of civilians, accountability for war crimes. If these are treated as secondary, then peace becomes only a pause, not a settlement. And beyond Ukraine, we must also look at the wider OSCE area. Frozen conflicts, occupation, displacement, hybrid threats, and double standards persist. Thank you. I will stop here.
Thank you. Thank you. The next speaker that you're going to hear from is Mr. Makita Potorayev from Ukraine, followed by Mrs. Farah Karimi from the Netherlands.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, esteemed colleagues. I rewritten my speech several times while hearing your interventions and reports. So I would like to stress now that Russia's ongoing war of aggression against Ukraine remains the most pressing threat to regional and international security, and it constitutes a blatant and systematic violation of the UN Charter and the Helsinki Final Act. The scale and persistence of their attacks against civil infrastructure underscore their strategic nature. In 2025 alone, Ukraine recorded 719 such strikes against energy and other critical infrastructures facilities, resulting in an estimated $15 billion in damage. Is it about only tragedy and genocidal practices? No. It's about experience. It's about unique experience of our energy engineers, which even lost their lives under these attacks, gathering knowledges that we are ready to share with every country for every extreme situation, from nature to military extreme situation. So we are ready to share our unique experience. Now, Russia continues to actively exploit modern technologies to manipulate informational spaces, justify its crimes, and distort reality. Digital platforms are weaponized to spread disinformation, shift blame, and normalize aggression. These manipulative narratives are designed not only to influence external audiences, but also to obscure accountability for war crimes and violations of international law. Such practices must be clearly named and systematically addressed. And last year, we have established special investigative ad hoc committee in our parliament dedicated to Russian crimes against media, against journalists and media in general. And on our summer meeting, we will present interim report. But we are ready, dear Tobias, to supply our committee with all preliminary data that we already gathered about Russian crimes against journalists, not only Ukrainian, but also international journalists, matters of Ukrainian and international journalists, and crimes against media infrastructure and media as a whole. Because what they do, they systematically attack freedom of speech and freedom of media, every country, everywhere they can do it. Beyond physical and cyber dimensions, Russia aggression has caused a damage to Ukraine's cultural heritage. Cultural sites, museums, religion buildings, and historical landmarks have been deliberately destroyed or looted. This is not collateral damage. It's a part of broad attempt to erase Ukrainian identity, historical memory, and cultural continuity. But what, Mr. Chairman, I would like to add that 2024, we established in our parliament another special ad hoc committee dedicated to colonized and even slavery nations, national minorities, and nations inside Russian Empire. And we will be, again, glad to supply our committee with a special report dedicated, because the whole national cultures are erased in Russia right now. The whole national languages are erased. So thank you for your attention. Russia war is not only Ukraine. Russia war is about all continents and, unfortunately, colonized people in Russia also. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker you will hear will be Mrs. Farah Karimi from the Netherlands, followed by Mr. Costel Donava from Romania.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, as you mentioned in your opening speech, in 5 days, we mark a painful anniversary. 4 years since Russia launched its full-scale aggression against Ukraine. I remember that day clearly. We were gathered here for our winter meeting. The Russian delegation joined online and claimed that within 48 hours, Russia would be in Kiev. 4 years later, Ukraine stands and continues to resist. For 4 years, the people of Ukraine have lived with war every day. Millions of lives devastated, families torn apart, cities destroyed every day. Even today, civilian and energy infrastructure are deliberately targeted to break the will of the people. But Ukraine does not give up. Its people continue to defend their freedom and sovereignty, even as support becomes less certain. At the same time, we must face a wider reality. The world has changed. International law is violated again and again. The post-war order is under destruction. Power and military force increasingly shape our world, one that looks more like a jungle than a community governed by rules. Multilateralism is in danger, authoritarianism is advancing, power is challenging law. And at this moment, the OSCE itself faces profound crisis, exactly when we need it strongest. Defending the Helsinki principles requires a strong organization. So the question is simple. Are we prepared as parliamentarians to secure the political support and resources the OSCE needs to function? Because without resources, an organization cannot act. And if we allow those resources to be cut, let us be honest, we are dismantling it ourselves. Thank you.
The next speaker you will hear from will be Mr. Costel Donava from Romania, followed by the Honorable Hedy Fry from Canada.
Mr. Chair, dear colleagues, this winter meeting takes place in a defining moment for European security. This year, we mark 4 years since Russia launched its full-scale war against Ukraine. One truth is unavoidable. This aggression is a direct assault on the Helsinki Final Act and on the rules that keep our region from sliding into permanent instability. For Romania, defending the Helsinki principles is defending the basics, sovereignty, territorial integrity, inviolability of borders, and the refrain from the use of force. Any peace built on coercion, occupation, or forced territorial changes is not peace, it is a precedent. Romania continues to support Ukraine's independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity within its internationally recognized borders, and we remain committed to a comprehensive, just, and lasting peace grounded in international law. But Helsinki is also about the human dimension. Comprehensive security means protecting people from atrocities and forced displacement, from energy shock, food insecurity, disinformation, and cyber aggression. It means accountability for violations, and it means sustaining Ukraine's resilience, military, economic, and societal, so that peace is not just supposed between words. The OSCE still has tools that must be protected and used. Practical support for Ukraine, including through OSCE mechanisms, such as the support program for Ukraine, and the indispensable work of ODIHR on democratic resilience and human rights. Romania also supports efforts toward a comprehensive, just, and lasting peace, consistent with international law on Ukraine's legitimate interests, and we are ready to contribute to Ukraine's recovery and reconstruction together with our partners. Thank you.
The next speaker you will hear is from Canada, the Honorable Hedy Fry, followed by from Turkey, Mr. Kamal Çelik.
Echo Irena when she thanked you and Roger Wicker for being here today. I think it is important that you are here showing strength and support for the OSCE. But things have to go beyond that. When Russia invaded Ukraine in its war of aggression, it broke every single one of the Helsinki Principles. The Helsinki Principles is a basis for the OSCE. It is the absolute bedrock, the heart of who we are and why we're here. And I think we're seeing now that there is a rapid deterioration of all of the principles. We're seeing it happening rapidly and suddenly. In Canada, for instance, we are seeing that we are afraid of superpowers. The superpower, originally Russia, now we know that the superpower, our friend and neighbor to the south of us, the United States of America, a superpower, has now begun to do exactly what Russia has been doing. Canada sees its integrity and territorial integrity threatened by coercion, by economic tariffs, by actually saying clearly that annexation is possible. I think we see that happening in Greenland. All of these principles are happening. And what does it tell us? It tells us that if we are going to face a world in which the superpowers are going to decide on spheres of power, dividing up the world into just massive superpowers, all of us as smaller nations are going to be on the menu. We're going to become vassal states. We need to realize that we have to band together. All of us. We have to come together. We have to support each other. We have to not only stand on principle, but we have to enact the kind of sanctions and do whatever we need to do to protect ourselves. I think our Prime Minister made a speech in Davos where he said, this is reality. The world is not what we wish it to be, it is what it is. And we have to react to what it is. And Canada and Greenland and the Arctic and the security of the OSCE region is at stake here. And it's sad to see the two major superpowers in the world threatening that security. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker that you're going to hear from Turkey, Mr. Kamal Çelik, followed by from Georgia, Mr. Nicholas Samkerdezi.
Sayın Başkan, değerli meslektaşlarım, Ukrayna'da devam eden savaş, Avrupa Atlantik güvenlik düzeninin dayandığı temel ilkeleri yeniden düşünmemizi zorunlu kılmaktadır. Helsinki Nihai Senedi ile ortaya konulan egemen eşitlik, sınırların dokunulmazlığı, kuvvet kullanmama ve insan haklarına saygı ilkeleri ortak güvenliğimizin temel çerçevesini oluşturmaktadır. Bugün bu çerçevenin hem sahada hem de diplomasi masasında ciddi biçimde sınandığına tanıklık etmekteyiz. Ukrayna'nın egemenliğinin ve toprak bütünlüğünün korunması gerektiği hususunda tereddütsüz bir duruş sergilenirken, güvenliğin bölünmezliği ilkesini de göz ardı etmemeliyiz. Bölgemizde ortaya çıkan güvensizlik ortamı yalnızca ilgili ülkeleri değil, çevre coğrafyaları da etkileyen bir istikrarsızlık zinciri yaratmaktadır. Helsinki ruhu bizlere güvenliğin tek taraflı kazanımlarla değil, tüm tarafların meşru endişelerinin ele alınmasıyla tesis edilebileceğini hatırlatmaktadır. Bu sebeple Ukrayna'da yaşanan insanlık dramı karşısında savunduğumuz evrensel standartları ve hukuki prensipleri Gazze'de yaşanan katliam, yıkım ve sivil kayıplar karşısında da aynı tutarlılıkla savunmak zorundayız. Sayın Başkan, aksi takdirde uluslararası sistem çifte standartları eleştirileri altında zayıflayacak, savunduğumuz değerler ise aşınacaktır. Helsinki ruhu en derin krizler ortamında dahi diyaloğun mümkün olduğunu göstermiştir. Ukrayna'da da diplomatik çözüm ve toprak bütünlüğü için ortaya koyduğumuz yaklaşımı Filistin'de de adil, kalıcı ve iki devletli bir çözüm temelinde akan kanın durması yönünde de sergilemeliyiz. AGİTPA, Birleşmiş Milletler Güvenlik Konseyi'nin ve Amerika Birleşik Devletleri'nin ne diyeceğine bakmadan asli görevi olan Avrupa güvenliği konusunda daha aktif ve daha etkin bir rol almalı ve bağlayıcı politikalar geliştirmeli ve bağlayıcı kararlar almalıdır. Teşekkür ederim.
The next speaker you will hear will be from Georgia, Mr. Nicholas Samaratsi, followed by from Armenia, Mrs. Lalet Menasan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Originally, I planned to speak about different topic, but I could not let some of your comments pass unanswered about Georgia. You said that Georgia is embracing Russia. You know, I may not be a native English speaker, but embracing means having close ties and connections to someone. Let me remind you, and also the audience here, that Georgia is the only country in this room which has not had diplomatic relations with Russia for the last 18 years. And we also do not have any bilateral political meetings with Russians since 2008. In fact, we are meeting Russians only in Geneva in presence of OSCE, EU, and the United States to discuss our territorial integrity. That's the only venue where we meet. We have had 3 different wars with Russia in the last 35 years. And we won several cases recently against Russia in International Criminal Court and in European Court of Human Rights. And also recently, we lodged an appeal in International Criminal Court against Russia on behalf of Ukraine for war crimes committed by Russia. So I don't think, I mean, it's a common sense that in embracing countries that embrace another country do not sue them in international courts and do not maintain any relations with the others. Therefore, we cannot tolerate being accused groundlessly and baselessly about our relations with Russia, coming even from our friends and partners. And despite being the most vulnerable country to Russian occupation after Ukraine, we stand firm in our policy vis-à-vis Russia. And final point, you mentioned also corruption, and the last report on corruption perception index by Transparency International still places Georgia #1 in Eastern Europe in fighting corruption. And Georgia is ahead of approximately 30 countries in the OSCE area in fighting against corruption. So singling out Georgia when speaking about corruption is very unfair, to say the least. Thank you very much.
The next speaker you will hear from is from Armenia, Mrs. Lalit Menasan, followed by Poland, and that will be Mr. Radzlav Fogel.
Thank you, dear colleagues. Over the past 2 months, international affairs have taken on a new conceptual shape. The discussions and statements delivered from the stages of Davos and the Munich Security Conference have signaled the emergence of a new paradigm, one marked by uncertainty and confrontation. For decades, the South Caucasus functioned within this very paradigm of confrontation. Today, however, our region has become a rare example of choosing a different path, the path of building peace and cooperation. This journey has not been easy. It has required political will, responsibility, and courage. As you know, on 8th of August 2025, the Prime Minister of Armenia, Nikol Pashinyan, and the President of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, with the witnessing and personal engagement of the President of the United States, Donald Trump, signed a peace declaration that closed a long chapter of enmity. The past 6 months have been unprecedented in terms of this tangible progress that Armenia and Azerbaijan have managed to achieve. Dear colleagues, if a year ago, while listening to statements from Azerbaijan and Armenian representatives, someone had suggested that within a year we will be discussing the opening of regional communications, expanding mutual trade, advancing economic cooperation, and organizing reciprocal visits of official and civil society delegations, many would have considered it unrealistic. Yes, today, these are no longer aspirations, they are ongoing processes. Armenia firmly believes that regional peace must be grounded in comprehensive security fully aligned with OSCE principles. Peace cannot be limited to the use of force alone. It must also ensure respect for sovereignty, territorial integrity, human rights, and the dignity and security of all peoples in the region. Prime Minister Pashinyan has openly acknowledged difficult realities and has communicated to our society that peace requires courage. It requires preparing citizens not for renewed escalation, but for coexistence. This is not always an easy message, but leadership demands responsibility. It is easier to maintain hostility. It is harder to choose a compromise. It is easier to speak to emotions. It is harder to speak to long-term responsibility. True strength is not demonstrated by the ability to prolong conflict, but by the ability to end it. Peace, in our understanding, is not a symbolic document. It is a transformation of regional logic. It is a strategic choice. Thank you.
The next speaker will be from Poland, Mr. Radoslav Fogel, followed by Mrs. Margaret Murphy O'Mahony from Ireland.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Dear colleagues, we gather here today just before the 4th anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion against Ukraine, an assault that has shattered the very foundations of our organization. By violating every principle enshrined in the Helsinki Decalogue, Russia has plunged the OSCE into an existential crisis, undermining the comprehensive security we have strived to build for decades. Over those 4 years, Russia has shown no intention of ending its aggression. Instead, it's kept up its old-style colonial demands, targeting Ukrainian civilians and critical infrastructure, even using winter as a means of war to inflict maximum suffering. This brutality extends far beyond Ukraine's borders, employing hybrid warfare tactics, including acts of sabotage and airspace violations that have hurt Poland and other member states, aiming to erode security and public order across the OSCE region. What should have been a jubilant 50th anniversary in 2025 has instead become a tough reminder of how European security is falling apart. We have to call out the aggressor clearly and stand firmly by one simple principle. When someone ignores international rules, there need to be real, consistent consequences. Historically, we had a saying in Poland, nothing about us without us. Now, it's nothing about Europe without Europe, nothing about Poland without Poland. We reject Russia's attempts to wield de facto veto power over sovereign decisions of the EU and NATO. Similarly, there must be no restrictions on NATO's deterrence and defense posture on the eastern flank, whether it's troops, equipments, or training. We can't talk about European security or arms control with Russia until peace is back. A lasting peace in Ukraine means it can defend itself properly with strong borders, a solid military ties to Western partners, and real guarantees to stop any future Russian attacks. The challenge ahead of us is enormous, but can be illustrated by a very simple example. When we are reading the Treasurer's report, and thank you, Johan, for guiding us through these rough times, it is clear, even here, within our own body, we couldn't agree on how to fix the budget gaps from Russia not paying its share. It shows the deep divisions sown by aggression and the urgent need for unity. We need clarity, courage, and political leadership. Thank you very much.
The next speaker you will hear from will be Miss Margaret Murphy O'Mahony from Ireland, followed by Mr. Dennis Dukarma from Belgium.
Gurv Mahagut Kahiraluk ta Onahos Arm August Tom on Boyakava on Shaw I Vienna or Madden Shaw. The fight for Helsinki principles is very important. As you know, the foundation in the Helsinki Final Act 1975 established the guiding principles for European security. These are sovereignty, territorial integrity, non-use of force, human rights, self-determination, all very important principles. The invasion of the Ukraine challenges core Helsinki principles, especially the ones of sovereignty, territorial integrity, and non-use of force. It is important to also remember that the fight for the Helsinki principles is not just about one country. It is about preserving a rules-based order where security is shared and rooted in both state sovereignty and human dignity. Gormuila Magov.
The next person that you will hear from will be Mr. Dennis Dukarma from Belgium, followed by Mrs. Gudrun Kugler from Austria.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Denis Ducarme, Monsieur le Président. Chers collègues, nous le répétons pour ainsi dire tous depuis ce matin, à quelques jours près, cela fera 4 ans que la Russie de Vladimir Poutine a redéclenché la guerre sur notre continent, mettant fin à des centaines de milliers de vies, tentant aussi de briser la nature, l'identité, la vocation européenne de nos amis ukrainiens et surtout leur liberté. Qu'ils soient assurés, malgré certaines faiblesses des Européens ou même de l'OSCE, qui, à la différence du Conseil de l'Europe, n'a pas suspendu la Russie de sa représentation au sein de son exécutif, qu'ils soient assurés de notre totale solidarité, de notre admiration pour leur courage et pour leur résistance. Qu'ils sachent aussi, à l'image de ce qu'a pu esquisser le secrétaire général dans ses interrogations portant sur l'architecture européenne de sécurité, combien ils nous ont placés à bon escient face aux réalités et face à nos propres contradictions. En effet, chers collègues, la coopération et la sécurité en Europe dont nous parlons beaucoup, donc la paix, n'est pas ou plus possible sans la puissance et l'autonomie stratégique, concepts pour lesquels, en faveur desquels, l'OSCE pourrait, devrait s'engager davantage. Je vous remercie.
The next speaker will be from Austria, Frau Gudrun Kugler, followed by Mr. Gaya Mamadov from Azerbaijan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to thank you, Mr. Chair, for your initial statement and for underlining the shared commitments and transatlantic cooperation. I think this is extremely important. I would also like to thank the Rapporteur, Tobias Winkler, for his speech. You underlined the non-negotiability of the Helsinki principles, and a few months after the anniversary, we cannot stop underlining that this is not on the negotiable table, but we commit to these principles. And Mr. Winkler, you also underlined the future role of OSCE in Ukraine. And I would like to do the same. Once we have a form of a peace treaty, and then we need to establish a lasting and just peace. And this means that all of us as in the OSCE, on the ministerial side, as well as on the parliamentary assembly side, have to work towards building this just and lasting peace. And you spoke of ceasefire monitoring, of post-conflict rehabilitation, civilian protection, and confidence building. I agree with you, Mr. Rapporteur. I asked yesterday the OSCE General Secretary, why is OSCE has the right mechanisms to safeguard peace? And he said, because we have the tools, because we have the experience, because we enjoy trust, and because we have a security architecture that everybody has once agreed to. So these are the tools upon which we need to be ready to build just and lasting peace. Now, I'm also special representative on demographic change for the Parliamentary Assembly. And looking at Ukraine, there are severe challenges with regard to demographics. It is the high number of displaced people, the casualties, but it's also a very low birth rate, which is also due to the war situation. And I commend Ukraine for having a national demographic strategy. I think this is very important. And experts at the Council of Foreign Relations have said that after there is a ceasefire, a peace treaty, it will be very important that we encourage displaced workers to go back to Ukraine in order to rebuild the country also for economic recovery. Now, let me finish by drawing your attention to the first session we had, the joint session. President Pons wished all the Muslim fellow citizens and friends a meaningful Ramadan. I would like to do that as well. But there is one thing he forgot to say, and it's also that at the very same time, for the Christians, Lent began. So I think it is, considering the populations consisting of many different people of religious backgrounds, I would like to extend my best wishes for a meaningful Ramadan and a meaningful Lent to everybody. Thank you very much.
The next speaker will be Mr. Gaya Mamadov from Azerbaijan, followed by Mrs. Edwiga Diaz from France. She's not. Okay. She is not. Mr. Mamadov is not in the room. Oh, wait, he is. Who's not in the room? Okay. Go right ahead.
Does work now? Does work now?
Good.
Mr. Chairman, the topic of today's debate brings us back to the core commitments of the Helsinki Final Act. Sovereignty, territorial integrity, and inviolability of borders are not abstract notions. They must be upheld consistently and without double standards. The ongoing war in Ukraine continues to pose a grave challenge to the international and regional security. We reiterate our firm support for the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine. In practical terms, we will continue to support Ukraine by further humanitarian assistance. Developments between Armenia and Azerbaijan show that peace is possible. The Washington Peace Summit of August 2025 marked a historic turning point in normalization of relations between Armenia and Azerbaijan. We appreciate the constructive role of the United States, in particular, President Trump personally, whose engagement contributed to consolidating the peace process. The recent visit by US Vice President Vance to Azerbaijan and Armenia sent a strong signal of continued US commitment to peace, connectivity, and development in our region. Today, Azerbaijan and Armenia enjoy de facto peace. Peace enables both Armenia and Azerbaijan to carry out a more flexible foreign policy and take advantage of untapped potential for cooperation for the benefit of their peoples. Direct bilateral negotiations have proven to be the most effective path forward. There are regular contacts between governments, parliaments, and civil society. practical cooperation takes shape with real steps in trade and transit. To maintain this momentum, removing remaining obstacles and full implementation of commitments is essential. In this regard, I wish to stress the importance of timely realization of the TRIP project. Distinguished colleagues, the OSCE's comprehensive security concept remains valid and necessary. To preserve its relevance, we must safeguard the consensus principle and focus on practical results. We stand ready to continue contributing to a stable and cooperative OSCE area grounded in international law and comprehensive security. Thank you.
The next speaker from France is Ms. Edwidja Diaz, followed by from the United States of America, Mr. Sheldon Whitehouse.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Chers collègues, la coopération et le consensus entre les États forment la pierre angulaire de la paix et des souverainetés. En septembre 2023, Marine Le Pen, la présidente de mon groupe parlementaire, a rédigé une déclaration des droits et des nations des peuples. C'est un texte inspiré de la Déclaration universelle des droits de l'homme adoptée par l'ONU en 1948. Ce texte permet de sacraliser des droits comme la sécurité, la défense des intérêts vitaux des peuples, mais aussi, notamment, de protéger les nations des excès de pouvoir d'organismes supranationaux ou de structures commerciales. L'article 3 de cette déclaration est intitulé « La souveraineté ». Cet article dispose que chaque nation, constituée en État, est souveraine. Nulle entité, de quelque nature que ce soit, oligarchique, financière, institutionnelle ou supranationale, publique ou privée, n'est ni fondée ni légitime à disposer pour elle. Ma famille politique, le Rassemblement national, estime que l'agriculture fait partie de la souveraineté nationale. Hélas, la Commission européenne prend des positions, notamment au sujet du traité de libre-échange, le Mercosur, contre l'avis du Parlement dont je suis élue, contre la volonté du peuple français. J'appelle donc solennellement la Commission européenne, au nom de la confiance des peuples en nos institutions, à respecter la décision du Parlement français, l'avis des Français, leur sécurité alimentaire et le travail réalisé par les agriculteurs français, à qui j'adresse un sincère message de soutien. Je souhaiterais donc que la Commission européenne cesse la mise en œuvre de ce traité de libre-échange. Je vous remercie.
The next speaker you will hear from will be Mr. Sheldon Whitehouse, Senator from the United States of America, followed by Mr. Via Kawanisto from Finland.
From Kyiv and Odessa, where the dark windows of apartment blocks bear witness to the Russian campaign of energy terror. Under that onslaught, the conduct of Ukrainians makes me proud to be a human being. But Ukrainians don't need our applause. They need our weapons and they need our support. Russia's quest for conquest and cruelty cannot be slaked. It must be defeated. Pressure in those negotiations should be on Russia's war criminals, not Ukraine's patriots. In this context, a consensus is emerging, a broad consensus, that we can shut down the shadow fleet that services Russia's oil economy. Most every member here has a role to play in doing that, facilitating the tracking of these vessels, engaging those who shut off their transponders, helping investigate the welter of shell corporations that mask the owners of the shadow fleet, withdrawing insurance support from these vessels, and ultimately participating where appropriate in boarding, inspecting, arresting, and seizing these vessels. Let's move forward on that. Thank you.
The next speaker you will hear from will be Mr. Via Kawanisto from Finland, followed by Switzerland, and that it will be Mr. Martin Karanidis.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
dear colleagues, Finland would like to emphasize three key messages. First, our support for Ukraine is not only a political commitment, but a matter of principle. Ukraine's sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity are non-negotiable. Violations of international law must never become the new normal. If we fail to act, we risk normalizing aggression and undermining the foundation of our shared security. In the end, we risk our future. This is why we must continue even stronger and more united support for Ukraine for as long as it takes. Second, the OSCE PA must remain focused on its core mandate, on what it's meant to do. When we focus on our own area of responsibility and our own strength, we can make a real impact. If we lose that focus, we risk weakening the organization itself. Our comprehensive concept of security remains our key asset. We must strengthen dialogue, confidence building, and conflict prevention. Third, we must stay true to our shared values. Democracy, the rule of law, and respect for human rights are the foundation of lasting security and sustainable peace. Without them, there is no trust, only instability and division. Mr. Chair, we are here not only to speak about challenges, but to address and resolve them. If we limit ourselves to words, we fall short of our responsibility. The OSCE PA is a community of commitments. Once again, it is time for us to show they matter. Unity, consistency, and resolve are essential. Thank you.
The next speaker will be Mr. Martin Candinas from Switzerland, followed by Mr.
Sehr geehrter Herr Präsident, geschätzte Kolleginnen und Kollegen. Die Schweiz übt seit Anfang dieses Jahres den Vorsitz der OSZE aus, dies in einer Zeit historischer Herausforderungen. Mit diesem Vorsitz bekräftigt die Schweiz als neutrales Land ihr Engagement für Frieden, für Stabilität und für kooperative Sicherheit in Europa und darüber hinaus. Inmitten der schwersten Krise seit Bestehen der OSZE müssen wir die Helsinki-Prinzipien als gemeinsames Fundament dauerhafter Sicherheit ins Zentrum rücken. Diese Prinzipien gelten nach wie vor. Sie stehen für eine Ordnung, die auf Völkerrecht, souveräner Gleichheit der Staaten und der Unverletzlichkeit von Grenzen beruht. Die Schweiz setzt sich dafür ein, dass die OSZE ihre wichtige Rolle aktiv wahrnehmen kann. Wie es in ihrem Namen steht, ist sie die Organisation für Sicherheit und Zusammenarbeit in Europa. Wir sind ein inklusives Forum für Dialog und Sicherheit. Dazu gehören Vertrauensbildung, der Schutz von Demokratie, Rechtsstaatlichkeit und Menschenrechten sowie der Umgang mit neuen Technologien. Gerade weil die OSZE das einzige sicherheitspolitische Forum ist, in dem Europa, die Länder Zentralasiens, Kanada, die Vereinigten Staaten und auch Russland vertreten sind, trägt sie besondere Verantwortung für den Dialog. Mit Blick auf mögliche Schritte hin zu einem Waffenstillstand beim russischen Krieg gegen die Ukraine müssen wir sicherstellen, dass die OSZE handlungsfähig bleibt. Die OSZE sollte beispielsweise eine Rolle bei der Überwachung eines Waffenstillstands sowie bei der Beobachtung künftiger Wahlen und Referenden spielen. Sie muss auch als Diskussionsort über die Zukunft der europäischen Sicherheit dienen und als Plattform für Dialog genutzt werden. Es ist unsere Aufgabe, in unseren Ländern eine aktive Rolle der OSZE im Falle von Friedensverhandlungen vorzusehen. Die Schweiz ist überzeugt, Sicherheit in Europa entsteht nicht gegeneinander, sondern nur miteinander im Dialog. Lassen Sie uns gemeinsam dafür einstehen. Besten Dank.
The next speaker you will hear, it will be from Tajikistan, and that will be Mr. Gulzada, followed by Mr. John Lahart. Followed by Mr. Marius Nielsen from Norway.
Большое спасибо, уважаемый господин председатель, уважаемые коллеги. Позвольте выразить признательность за представленную возможность выступить на этой авторитетной площадке, которая служит важным инструментом укрепления доверия, развития парламентского диалога и обеспечения коллективной безопасности на пространстве ОБСЕ. Мир и стабильность являются основой взаимопонимания и сотрудничества между культурами и цивилизациями, позволяя народам не выступать в конфронтации, а напротив взаимодействовать и взаимно обогащаться. Именно этим целям отвечает инициатива президента Республики Таджикистан, лидера нации, уважаемого Эмомали Рахмона, озвучая на сессии Генассамблеи ООН о принятии специальной резолюции об объявлении десятилетия укрепления мира для будущих поколений. В условиях сложной и противоречивой международной обстановки данная инициатива способна стать прочной основой международного взаимодействия во имя долгосрочного мира, укрепляя взаимопонимание и сотрудничество между народами. Призываю вас поддержать это предложение во имя стабильности настоящего и благополучия будущих поколений. Все эти инициативы мы протягиваем руки партнерства, предлагаем не догму, а диалог, не давление, а взаимное вдохновение, приглашаем мировые сообщества сделать осознанный выбор в пользу мира. Мы исходим из необходимости достижения прочного мира на Ближнем Востоке исключительно путем переговоров и дипломатических усилий в строгом соответствии с международным правом и положением Устава ООН. Республика Таджикистан находится на переднем рубеже обеспечения региональной безопасности и непосредственно сталкивается с вызовами, связанными с ситуацией в Афганистане. Мы последовательно выступаем за мирное и устойчивое развитие этой страны и считаем крайне важным продолжение международной поддержки ее социально-экономической стабилизации. В заключение позвольте подтвердить искреннюю заинтересованность Республики Таджикистан в дальнейшем развитии всесторонних взаимодействий с парламентской ассамблеей ОБСЕ посредством использования существующих механизмов диалога и сотрудничества. Убежден, что наши взаимодействия имеют важнейшее значение для формирования справедливого международного порядка без двойных стандартов, где каждое государство будет жить в мире и безопасности со своими соседями под надежной защитой международного права. Благодарю за внимание.
Dear colleagues, I wanted to remind everyone that we are about to close the list of speakers. If there are any last-minute speakers that are requesting the floor, please indicate them to our procedural team. The list will be closed after the next speaker. The list will be closed after the next speaker. The next speaker that you will hear will be Mr. John Lahart from Ireland, followed by Mrs. Gilsa Yorda from France.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I represent a delegation from Ireland. We're on the very edge of Europe, on the western seaboard of Europe, far from Kiev, but we stand shoulder to shoulder with the Ukrainian people. It is very refreshing to hear, if not a little premature, to be discussing peace and using the words peace in the context of Ukraine. And it is heartening and particularly reassuring to hear warm American voices at this conference supporting multilateral institutions and reliable and long-standing allies and friends. $1 billion of trade crosses the Atlantic Ocean to Europe every 6 hours in the form of trade, goods, and services. And this is the lifeblood of our people, our economies, and in terms of providing food on people's tables. The Russian shadow fleet is a menacing presence in Irish waters. So rules-based security is important, not just for small states, but small states like my own especially depend hugely on rules-based institutions and human rights-based decision-making. And that rules-based multilateral order emerged after the most terrible of conflicts. Ireland knows about peaceful settlements of disputes, And peace building requires resilience, determination, commitment, stamina, mutual respect, and the inclusion of both male and female voices. I was particularly taken by the contribution of the director of the OSCE Conflict Prevention Centre, Catherine Fearon. And I know of one particular initiative run by ODIHR, where young women under the age of 35 from Kosovo and Serbia have been visiting peace projects in Northern Ireland for the last 7 or 8 years and now amount to an alumni of 200 young women. Director Fearon's contribution demonstrates that while OSCE countries rightly develop their resilience in security, peace relies on willing partners, and Russia hasn't demonstrated itself as a willing partner. And the fight for Helsinki principles doesn't just apply to Ukraine, clearly applies to Ukraine, but applies to Ukraine and beyond. And this is as true of Gaza as it is of Ukraine. And I welcome in that context, and I'm interested in news about developments by President Trump in relation to their peace board today, and we look forward to further developments in that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your chairing of this and your presence here today, along with Senator Vickers and Senator Whitehouse.
A quick change in the lineup here. The next speaker will be Mr. Marius Nilsson from Norway, followed by Ms. Giselle Jorda from France.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. We are very pleased that you and your colleagues are here at this winter meeting, reinforcing and cementing this forum for cooperation and dialogue. It's of paramount importance, and it's a great reassurance to hear you and your colleagues underlining this. The OCPA is an important venue for cooperation and finding common ground for security, democracy, respect of sovereignty, international law, and the rest of the Helsinki Principle for all the OCPA member states. To the reporter, Mr. Winkler, thank you for your report. I believe that your focus in the report is right. Ukraine must come first in our agenda and should have a prominent place in the report. I want to say that Norway stands firmly with Ukraine and calls for Russia to stop this meaningless war now. I also want to address the unnecessary and unjustified comments from President Trump regarding the US overtaking of Greenland. In a time of global conflict and uncertainty, allied unity and cooperation should be sought, not conflict, division, and undue pressure upon long-standing allies. Norway's share an unwavering commitment to security in the Arctic and to strengthening NATO. A strong and firm alliance between the US, Europe, and the rest of NATO, based on the respect, unity, and the Helsinki Principle, is the best guarantor for peace and democracy. And we need to get back to that. Thank you.
The next speaker you will hear will be Ms. Giselle Jorda from France, followed by Mr. Sayed Torum from Turkey.
Monsieur le Président, mes chers collègues, Monsieur le Secrétaire général, 4 ans la semaine prochaine que la guerre sévit en Ukraine. Combien de vies brisées par cette tragédie? Des centaines de milliers, probablement, entre les morts et les blessés, sans compter près de 6 millions de réfugiés. C'est une catastrophe humanitaire qui dure depuis bien trop longtemps. Aujourd'hui, je voudrais rappeler les principes consacrés par les accords d'Helsinki dont nous avons l'année dernière célébré les 50 ans. Souveraineté, intégrité territoriale, règlement pacifique des différends, l'OSCE doit les défendre fermement, ainsi que ceux de démocratie, de droits humains et d'état de droit. À cet égard, je salue tout particulièrement la visite du président en exercice de l'OSCE à Kiev, puis à Moscou, pour la première fois depuis le 24 février 2022. car elle symbolise l'engagement de l'OSCE en faveur du dialogue politique. Chers collègues, émanation de l'OSCE, nous, membres de la POSCE, nous avons aussi un rôle important à jouer pour porter haut les principes d'Helsinki et agir pour la sécurité. Il y a un an, ici même, je vous disais que dans le débat sur les défis prioritaires de la sécurité en Europe, j'avais la sincère conviction que la guerre d'agression russe en Ukraine constituerait soit l'acte de naissance, soit l'acte de décès de la sécurité européenne. Il est vital de cesser d'être dans la réaction passive et de passer à l'action. En étant moteur dans le dialogue, force de proposition pour mettre fin au conflit, autant l'OSCE que la POSCE assument l'importance qui est la leur rôle essentiel en tant que vecteur de sécurité, de coopération et de paix. Notre instance possède une dimension diplomatique. En renforçant notre présence, notre influence sur la scène internationale, nous montrons aussi que nous avons une expertise. Alors utilisons-la sans modération pour mettre fin à la guerre. Par nos outils, notre réseau, nous pouvons, si nous nous y impliquons, contribuer à relever les défis post-conflit pour garantir une paix juste et durable en Ukraine. Ce n'est pas prématuré, chers collègues, de penser à l'après, car au-delà de la fin du conflit, c'est toute l'architecture européenne de sécurité qu'il faut dès à présent repenser pour la reconstruire, dans le respect de nos principes. Alors, chers collègues, unissons nos voix pour encourager un processus politique crédible, fondé sur les principes de l'OSCE, en soutenant une issue négociée, la plus juste et durable possible, parce qu'elle sera fondée sur le droit de garantir une nouvelle architecture de sécurité à laquelle tous nos concitoyens européens aspirent. Je vous remercie.
The next speaker you will hear will be Mr. Said Torun from Turkey, followed by Mr. Thomas Portis from France.
Teşekkürler Sayın Başkan. Sayın Başkan, değerli meslektaşlarım. 5. yılına girmek üzere olan Ukrayna'daki savaş, Agit coğrafyasının tamamında güvenliği, refahı ve istikrarı tehdit eden derin bir kırılma yaratmıştır. Her geçen gün uzayan bu savaş bize güvenliğin bölünemez olduğu gerçeğini bir kere daha göstermektedir. Bir yerde ihlal edilen egemenlik, başka bir yerde istikrar ve barışa meydan okumak anlamına gelmektedir. Agit üye ülkeleri için nihai amaç yalnızca çatışmazlık değildir. Biz asıl nihai amacı Helsinki Nihai Senedi'nin temel ilkelerine egemenlik, toprak bütünlüğü, sınırların ihlal edilmemesi ve insan haklarına saygı, yeniden hayat vermektir. Uluslararası hukukun evrensel norm ve ilkeleri aşındıkça kapsamlı güvenlik mimarisi de çökmeye mahkumdur. Türkiye Cumhuriyeti'nin kurucusu Mustafa Kemal Atatürk'ün yurtta su, cihanda sulh sözü bugün her zamankinden daha anlamlıdır. İçinde bulunduğumuz jeopolitik kaos karşısında barış bir temenni değil, bir stratejik zorunluluktur. Savaşın başından bu yana savandığımız temel ilke şudur: kalıcı barış ancak diplomasi ve müzakere yoluyla mümkündür. Tarafların aynı masa etrafında buluştuğu her girişim ne kadar zor olursa olsun savaşın sürmesinden daha değerlidir. Ukrayna'nın bağımsızlığını, egemenliğini ve güvenliğini desteklemek ve Ukrayna'nın egemen bir demokrasi olarak bu savaştan çıkması Agit'in meşrutiyeti açısından da kritiktir. Aynı duyarlılığı Gazze için de bekliyoruz. Son olarak ABD Başkanı Trump'ın uluslararası bütün normları yok sayan tek taraflı diplomasi yaklaşımı bir kez daha göstermektedir ki Avrupa ülkeleri artık daha fazla Amerikan desteğine bağımlı olmaktan çıkmalı, kendi kendine yeten bir savunma gücüne sahip olmalıdır. Barışı savunmak zayıflık değildir. Barışı savunmak cesarettir ve bu cesareti göstermek hepimizin tarihsel sorumluluğudur. Teşekkürler.
The next speaker you will hear will be Mr. Thomas Portis from France, followed by Mr. Werner Summers from Belgium. We cannot hear you, sir. Cannot hear you, sir.
It's okay?
Yes.
Ok. Monsieur le Président, collègues, nous voilà à nouveau ici réunis pour parler des accords d'Helsinki, de l'urgence à les préserver et à les faire vivre. Mais comment ici parler de paix et de fin des guerres comme nous le souhaitons en Ukraine, d'inviolabilité des frontières, de droit international et de droits humains au moment où le projet d'éradication du peuple palestinien mené par Israël se poursuit? D'abord à Gaza, où le génocide continue. Depuis le soi-disant cessez-le-feu déclaré, il y a eu plus de 1000 violations par Israël et 601 Palestiniens, dont au moins 100 enfants, ont été assassinés par l'État israélien. Chaque jour, l'enfer se déchaîne à Gaza. On parle, et c'est une fourchette basse, de 75 Palestiniens décédés, dont 75% de femmes et d'enfants. Écoutez ces mots insoutenables tirés d'un rapport des Nations Unies. Les opérations militaires ont rongé tous les piliers de la survie. Gaza a été plongée dans une abîme façonnée par l'homme. On peut sérieusement douter qu'elle puisse se reconstruire, non seulement comme espace de vie, mais comme société. Et que dire de la Cisjordanie? Il y a 2 jours, le ministre des Finances israélien appelait à éliminer l'idée d'un État palestinien en déplaçant les Palestiniens de leurs terres, ainsi qu'à revenir sur les accords d'Oslo. Il détaillait son programme, Colonisation 2030, une nouvelle étape dans l'accélération déjà sans précédent de la colonisation illégale des terres de l'État de Palestine. Le grignotage de ces terres s'est multiplié par 8 depuis 2023. L'année 2025 a marqué un nombre record de violences commises par les colons, avec 240 Palestiniens assassinés, dont 55 enfants. Depuis les années 70, l'Assemblée de l'ONU a déjà voté 11 résolutions condamnant la colonisation et les violences perpétrées contre les civils. En mars 2024, l'ONU reconnaissait l'évidence. Il s'agit d'un crime de guerre. Qu'attend notre organisation pour exiger des sanctions économiques et diplomatiques européennes à l'encontre de l'État d'Israël? Notre Assemblée doit de manière claire demander la suspension de l'accord d'association entre Israël et l'Union européenne. Une pétition citoyenne allant dans ce sens, lancée par Manon Aubry, a déjà recueilli 400 000 signatures. L'intention d'éliminer l'État de Palestine et l'intégralité de son peuple est chaque jour plus manifeste. Face aux puissants de ce monde qui rêvent de construire de nouveaux modèles basés sur la loi du plus fort, nous devons plus que jamais défendre sans aucune concession le droit international, ses organisations et ses représentants. Et je veux dire ici tout mon soutien et ma reconnaissance à Francesca Albanese, rapporteure spéciale de l'ONU pour les territoires occupés palestiniens, attaquée après le secrétaire général de l'ONU, Antonio Guterres, pour sa défense du droit international. Les principes d'Helsinki, égalité, souveraineté des États, inviolabilité des frontières, respect de l'intégrité territoriale des États, droit à l'autodétermination des peuples, ne peuvent être défendus que grâce à la diplomatie parlementaire. Et je demande ici, au nom de mon groupe parlementaire de la France Insoumise, que notre organisation apporte de manière publique et officielle un soutien à Francesca Albanese, qui a été une des premières à porter au plus haut niveau la qualification de génocide et les nécessaires mandats d'arrêt de la Cour pénale internationale contre les criminels de guerre israéliens.
Our next speaker will be Mr. Werner Summers from Belgium, followed by Mr. Michel Herbian from France.
Ja, vielen Dank, Herr Vorsitzender. Ich möchte mich in der Sprache des Gaststaates äußern. Frieden baut nicht auf Illusion oder endlose Eskalation, sondern auf Realismus, Dialog und Verantwortung. Die Invasion Russlands in der Ukraine verletzt klar das Völkerrecht, insbesondere Artikel 2 Absatz 4 der Satzung der Vereinten Nationen. Das heißt, das allgemeine Gewaltverbot in den internationalen Beziehungen mitsamt das Annexionsverbot. Doch nach fast 4 Jahren Krieg muss eine unbequeme, bedauernswerte Wahrheit anerkannt werden. Die Ukraine kann diesen Krieg leider militärisch nicht gewinnen. Es ist eine Illusion zu glauben, dass Russland vollständig besiegt werden kann oder dass alle seit 2014 eroberten Gebiete, darunter die Krim und Teile des Donbass, wieder unter ukrainische Kontrolle gelangen werden. Unsere derzeitige Politik verlängert nur den Krieg. Westliche Unterstützung hat leider keine nachhaltige Lösung gebracht, sondern den Konflikt in die Länge gezogen, was steigende menschliche Verluste und wachsende Instabilität in Europa zur Folge hat. Wir dürfen auch die globalen Konsequenzen dieser Situation nicht übersehen. China hat ein klares Interesse daran, dass der Krieg fortdauert, um längerfristig seine Position zu stärken. Ein anhaltender Konflikt in der Ukraine verschafft Peking Zeit, den Angriff auf Taiwan vorzubereiten, was verheerende Folgen für die Weltwirtschaft hätte, wegen der zentralen Rolle des Pazifikraums und der Halbleiterproduktion in Taiwan. Wir müssen verhindern, dass Russland sich noch enger an China bindet. Eine dauerhafte Lösung kann nur durch Verhandlungen erreicht werden. Die Ukraine wird dafür vielleicht territoriale Zugeständnisse machen müssen, so ungerecht diese auch sein mögen. Selbstverständlich sollte ein Friedensabkommen die Zustimmung der ukrainischen Bevölkerung erhalten und Garantien für die Integrität und Souveränität, das heißt für die dauerhafte Lebensfähigkeit des verbleibenden ukrainischen Staatsgebietes beinhalten. Europa muss aufhören, nur Zahler und Lieferant zu sein. Wir müssen unsere Verantwortung zurückgewinnen und auf einem Sitz am Verhandlungstisch bestehen. Denn Frieden in Europa darf nicht über Europas Kopf hinweg verhandelt werden. Die Prinzipien von Helsinki zu verteidigen, heißt heute, den Mut zu haben, Frieden zu verfolgen, auch wenn dieser Frieden unvollkommen ist. Vielen Dank.
Our next speaker, is going to be Mr. Michael Herbian from France, followed by Mr. Oscar Mina from San Marino.
Ça marche? Oui? Merci, Monsieur le Président, chers collègues. Nous allons entrer, hélas, dans la 5e année du conflit entre la Russie et l'Ukraine. Dans son intervention ce matin, le président de la Rada d'Ukraine, notre ami Ruslan, indiquait, je cite, « Il faut demander des comptes à la Russie ». Oui, il faut demander des comptes à la Russie sur les crimes de guerre, parmi lesquels il y a des crimes qui sont particulièrement inacceptables, odieux, monstrueux et qui nous serrent le cœur, le sort des enfants ukrainiens. Mon pays, la France, comme l'OSCE, sont très engagés sur cette question. La France soutient depuis 2023 l'intégration des enfants de retour de Russie et des territoires occupés à travers la contribution à l'UNICEF. De même, la France agit pour la mise en place des centres de protection des droits des enfants. La France finance depuis le début du conflit de nombreux projets, tels que notamment la reprise de l'enseignement présentiel dans un environnement sûr, la rénovation des écoles, la construction d'abris anti-aériens, la fourniture de bus scolaires. La France soutient toute une série de mesures permettant aussi d'apporter un soutien psychosocial et de favoriser la protection des enfants. Je veux souligner également l'action de l'OSCE qui soutient l'accompagnement psychologique des enfants ukrainiens dans le contexte de la guerre, ainsi que le suivi juridique des exactions russes en matière de droits de l'homme. Le SPU, le Support Program for Ukraine, a soutenu la mise en place de centres d'accueil pour les enfants victimes de guerre où ils peuvent recevoir un soutien psychologique et un soutien social. De même, un volet relatif aux enquêtes contre l'exploitation sexuelle des enfants a été inclus. En mai 2023, un rapport publié dans le cadre du mécanisme de Moscou de l'OSCE mettait en lumière le transfert forcé et la déportation d'enfants ukrainiens vers la Russie, ainsi que les violations du droit international humanitaire qui peuvent constituer des crimes de guerre. Alors, pour conclure, je lance un double appel. Oui, nous devons soutenir la délégation de nos amis ukrainiens qui vont proposer en mai prochain d'utiliser le mécanisme de Moscou pour traiter la question de l'endoctrinement militaire des enfants dans les territoires ukrainiens occupés par la Russie. Oui, de même, il conviendrait qu'une structure de l'OSCE joue un rôle de médiation sur la question des enfants ukrainiens déportés ou transférés de force. Cette structure n'existe pas aujourd'hui et je propose qu'on la crée au sein de l'OSCE. Je vous remercie.
The next speaker that you will hear will be Mr. Oscar Mina from San Marino, followed by Mr. Turbak Omar from Algeria.
Grazie Presidente. Il titolo di questo dibattito richiama inevitabilmente i principi stabiliti con l'atto finale di Helsinki. In particolare voglio ribadire il rispetto della sovranità e dell'integrità territoriale e l'inviolabilità delle frontiere. Questi principi in Ucraina, lo dobbiamo dire e gridare ancora, sono stati violati dalla Russia. Dobbiamo quindi continuare ad opporci ai cambiamenti dei confini ottenuti con la forza e infine ribadire che la sicurezza europea si basa su quelle regole e non sulla coercizione. Lo ricordava molto bene questa mattina il presidente Post nel suo intervento di apertura. I principi di Helsinki, quindi, certo, vanno oltre all'Ucraina, ma la posta in gioco riguarda l'intero sistema di sicurezza europeo ed internazionale e dobbiamo ripartire proprio dal caso dell'Ucraina che deve e dovrà essere al centro di tutti i dibattiti di sicurezza in ambito sociale, politico, economico e militare. E l'OSCE deve mantenere il suo ruolo e soprattutto non può cambiare geograficamente con la guerra. E se dovesse essere indebolito in una delle sue tre dimensioni, sarà proprio l'OSCE stessa ad essere messa in discussione nei futuri processi di pace e di cooperazione. Grazie.
No? Oh. The next speaker will be from Algeria, Mr. Turbak Omar, followed by Ms. Federica Onari from Italy.
Monsieur le Président, Mesdames et Messieurs les parlementaires, distingués délégués, j'avais préparé une intervention consacrée à la paix, au droit international et à la légitimité dans la perspective d'un ordre mondial à reconstruire, sur des bases plus justes, plus équilibrées et réellement universelles. Une intervention guidée par la conviction que la stabilité internationale ne peut se fonder ni sur la force seule, ni sur l'arbitraire politique, mais sur le respect du droit, de la dignité humaine et de la légalité entre les causes. Or, malheureusement et comme trop souvent par le passé, à l'exception de quelques voix courageuses, nous avons constaté que la cause palestinienne, et en particulier la tragédie de Gaza, ne bénéficie pas du même poids politique, moral et institutionnel que d'autres crises internationales. Cette réalité n'est pas une perception, mais un fait objectif que nous devons de dénoncer avec clarté et responsabilité, car elle fragilise le discours international sur la paix et vide le droit international sur la paix et vide le droit international sur la paix et vide le droit international de sa portée universelle. En effet, lors de cette séance, une question de fond a été posée par la représentante de la Turquie interrogeant l'absence d'une position claire face à l'agression contre Gaza, alors que l'organisation fait preuve d'une mobilisation forte et constante sur la crise en Ukraine. Cette question, sans réponse, révélant une hiérarchisation implicite des drames humains selon la priorité géopolitique, ce silence ne peut être considéré comme neutre. Il traduit un déséquilibre dans l'application des principes des droits internationaux humanitaires et affaiblit la crédibilité du discours universaliste que nous portons dans cette organisation parlementaire qu'est l'OSCE. La sécurité ne peut être fondée sur la sélectivité et la dignité humaine ne saurait être défendue à géométrie variable. Si nos enceintes parlementaires ont un sens, c'est bien celui d'être la voix du droit et de la conscience face à toutes les injustices, sans exception. Il est toujours utile de rappeler que les enfants, les femmes et les grabataires palestiniens à Gaza subissent en ces moments hivernaux de lourdes conséquences humanitaires. Le froid intense, le manque d'accès à la nourriture, à l'eau potable et aux soins médicaux de base aggravent leur vulnérabilité malgré le pacte de paix proclamé, laissant des milliers de familles dans une situation précaire et urgente en Palestine. Je termine mon intervention en souhaitant à tous les musulmans un mois de carême béni et un bon ramadan rempli de paix, de sécurité et de solidarité. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
The next speaker that you will hear will be Ms. Federica Onari from Italy. The next speaker will be Mrs. Federica Onari from Italy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, colleagues. The fight for the Helsinki principles in Ukraine and beyond reminds us that comprehensive security is not static. It evolves as the nature of threats evolve. Today, artificial intelligence is increasingly shaping how conflicts are fought, how societies are influenced, and how security decisions are taken. AI already affects this conflict environment in very concrete ways, through information manipulation and disinformation, automated surveillance and targeting, and data-driven military and security decision-making. These developments raise fundamental questions for the Helsinki principles, particularly sovereignty, human rights, accountability, and democratic control. At the same time, AI is not just a risk multiplier. If governed responsibly, it can support early warning, conflict prevention, and situational awareness, helping institutions detect escalation risks and protect civilians. The question is therefore not whether AI will shape security, it already does, but how we ensure it does so in line with our shared principles. From a parliamentary perspective, this is where our responsibility lies. Existing human rights and international humanitarian law apply fully to AI-enabled systems, especially in conflict contexts. Human oversight, transparency, and political accountability are essential to preserving comprehensive security. As Special Representative on Artificial Intelligence, I remain committed to ensure that the security implications of AI are addressed within our comprehensive security framework. Grounding regional peace in comprehensive security today requires that artificial intelligence remain firmly anchored in sovereignty, human rights, democratic control, and rule of law. In this context, I welcome continued dialogue with colleagues on how artificial intelligence is affecting our national security and resilience efforts. Addressing these developments collectively is essential to upholding the Helsinki principle in Ukraine and beyond. Thank you.
Colleagues, we have now exhausted our list of speakers. So now we're going to move on to the final item of the day on the agenda. Does any member wish to raise any other business at this time? Seeing none? Actually, no, we have one from Ukraine that would like to have a final word here.
Very short announcement, colleagues. As I've mentioned today earlier, Russia is waging its war against freedom and democracy on all fronts, from military to cultural and informational, and all continents. What could be the only one answer? To strengthen unity and to grow strength. How? Let's us answer this question on our very special side event today, which will be held by American, British, and Ukrainian delegation in 10 minutes on the 5th floor. So I invite everyone to introduce you to our newest technological and military decisions, which were created all together, Ukraine and its allies and friends. Thank you.
Colleagues, I would like to extend our collective and heartfelt thanks to each and every one of you and all of the speakers. Everyone was so insightful and made contributions to what I thought was a very important discussion, and more importantly, for their continued dedication to the critical work that they carry out every day in the interest of citizens around the world. I would also like to thank fellow committee members, Tobias and Hiroshima, for the excellent cooperation we had in recent months, and I hope to continue this spirit in advance of our next meeting during the annual sessions. As usual, on behalf of the committee, I would also like to express my sincere gratitude to the staff. The staff has done an outstanding job. If we could please give them an applause. Our very capable committee advisor, Manu, for their efforts in preparing this preparation and this meeting, the interpreters whose skill helped bridge our communications. Thank you, interpreters. And so our next our next meeting during our annual session will be in Hague in July. I now declare the 2026 winter meeting of the Committee on Political Affairs and Security closed.